Do you suspect, because many people will, that some of your support has leaked away to those people who are campaigning vigorously to stop immigration? And that Sinn Féin's position on immigration has been not abundantly clear.
Well, let me deal with that first. Our position on immigration has been clear and articulated for a very, very long time. I mean, I've been setting out our stall on this as far back as 2006 and 2007, Pat. And our position is that you need a system where decisions are taken efficiently and quickly. You need a system that is fair and respectful to individuals and to communities. And you need a rule book and rules that are actually applied and enforced. And that has been our consistent position for the longest time. We don't agree with the government in terms of the EU Migration Pact. There are parts of it, two parts specifically, that we believe make sense for Ireland to tie into. The rest doesn't. Unlike other European countries, we are in a common travel area with our nearest neighbour. Therefore, we need the flexibility to be able to respond to our very particular circumstances.
So what do you not like about the pact?
And in any event, we need, I think, decisions on something as important as immigration are best taken here domestically by people who are elected by the Irish people.
So what is it about the pact that you don't
Well,
like?
my main bugbear with it is that it just restricts us too much and ties us in a way that will not allow us to respond to the fact that we have a common travel area with Britain. And I have to say, the government, I think, have not paid enough attention to that fact. We want the common travel area to endure. As you know, I'm an Irish Republican. I'm for a united Ireland. I don't want a border on our island. But
weren't there noises within your own party about more border controls?
No.
I heard, I can't quote the individuals, but there were people saying that close to the border you do need more border checks.
No. I think what had come up was the question of cooperation between the PSNI and the Gardaí. That cooperation is as old as the common travel area itself. And of course they cooperate on all manner of issues. But to be clear, there can be no question of a remilitarisation of that border. My God, we spent years through the whole Brexit debacle, which I discussed on many occasions with you, Pat, making sure that there would be no hardening of the border. There will be, I believe, a change of government in London. I think that's most probable. And then there has to be a discussion with the administration in London about safe return of people. That's where that needs to rest. But the big challenge for us, Pat, is to have a system in this state that actually works. And you can see the evidence of the government's failure in people sleeping in tents on Mount Street and along the canal. Nobody wants to see that. That is utterly
unacceptable.
What
would you do with them?
The government know
I mean,
what they need to do.
Would you unpitch those tents and scrap them? And
the government have known for years now what they needed to do. They were told by Catherine Day that they had to construct properly constituted reception centres. This is not new. They were told this years ago. They failed to do that. They predicted large numbers of people coming from Ukraine and elsewhere. That transpired. But the same government that had made that prediction had failed comprehensively to put together any kind of workable plan. And worse than that, Pat, and for me, this is the biggest failure of all. They failed to engage with communities, to have a respectful conversation about new people coming into areas, to listen carefully and to provide the kinds of resources for school places, access to dental services, GP services, the things that people rely on, that naturally had to be beefed up when new people were coming onto the system.
In practical terms, if there are, 30,000 people coming this year who are seeking asylum, where would you put them?
Well, there has to be emergent. There has to.
Do you see tented towns all over the country?
No, I don't think we want that. I think where there has to be emergency accommodation, where it is appropriate tented accommodation, it can't be on street curbs and it can't be along the Grand Canal.
Do you see it scattered across the country? Because obviously there aren't that many green spaces in the capital which are not public parks for amenities, if you like.
Yeah, I think the government came at it late in terms of making use of some lands that are held by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Defence and military facilities. And that is not ideal. Far from, I don't see anybody living in tents. I think it's outrageous. But given that they have failed to do what needed to be done, where you have to take that emergency decision, you don't leave people for weeks and weeks on the side of a street in tents that the state provides and then the state scoops up. The whole thing has been a mess. So the immigration issue is coming up on the doors, Pat. More so in some areas than others. It is an issue. It's not the issue. Housing, the cost of living are the issues. But the immigration question is there, and people have concerns. A small, tiny minority have sought to weaponise this issue and to create a very toxic, loud atmosphere around it. But most people, and I've spoken to a lot of people on this issue, are practical, reasonable and decent. And their big complaint to me is that in this government, they don't see anybody actually in charge with a sense of planning and a sense of purpose.
Simon Harris would maintain that he is the one in charge, that he's become, if you like, instant in terms of his responses to the various crises where there might have been a tardiness before.
Well,
of course. Do you see that in him?
Well, of course, Simon Harris is a member of Cabinet for 8 or 9 years? So the idea of trying to play new kid on the block or a new broom that sweeps clean doesn't really tally with the facts. I think it's a classic case of spin.
Some of the texts coming in, the Sinn Féin voter base is predominantly in working class areas. Anti-immigrant sentiment is also highest in working class areas. There is a conundrum here that Sinn Féin simply cannot solve.
Okay, can I just deal with that? Can I just say very directly and just sound a word of caution? A word of caution in the stereotype that suggests that working class people or working class communities are somehow more prone to toxic views than middle class or better off. That's not actually true. And people need to be careful with that. You know, the respectable veneer of middle class Ireland, that there can't be some fairly toxic views there as well. Our support base now comes from every walk of life, Pat. So we draw support and we seek to represent people from every walk of life. There are people who, because of a lack of housing, because of pressure on resources, whether it's looking for an assessment of needs for your child or a surgical intervention if your child has scoliosis or whatever the case may be, who, of course, are under more pressure than others. But I think it's really unfair to say that therefore they are more likely to have views ascribed to them by some of those textures. I just don't accept that.